welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Phoenix Rising 86, Retro Bill, More Books, Canna Bear, Fibre Oats, Michael Kahn, Rob H, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Troy Shuker, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Dal West Watson, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Thanks.
Good?
Good over here.
Go, Jorge, go. Go on, Jorge, you can do it. I thought Jorge had something to say for a minute there.
He said, guns.
What is it you're trying to do? Is it test out your computer in general, is it, Nathan? I just caught the tail end of what you're saying there about games.
Yeah, just testing it to get it stable. I bought a new graphics card because the old one was going a bit wonky, and I bought a new monitor so I could fit more stuff on the screen. So just making it stable again. Not that everything's changed, but a couple of changes have been made, so therefore things need to be tested, and that's all I've been doing. I'll finish now. I can sit here in total silence with no fans running, and even if they do come on, they're very, very, very quiet, to the point where I can't hear them a metre away, which is how far the PC is from me.
So, but you said you didn't care. You don't care if they're loud, or I can't handle loud fans.
No, I do care, very much care. That's all I care about. I want it to be absolutely silent, or as close to at all times, you know, no matter what it's doing.
Oh, I thought you said you didn't care.
Oh, I do, very much so. Yeah, nothing more irritating than a right next to your head. No, thank you.
Or a muffler that's busted exhaust system. That's worse, which I'm listening to right now.
Yeah, mine did the same. I don't know if I mentioned that. I had a new exhaust, and only a few months later, one of the gaskets in it went, and it started to blow. It sounded horrible. So they changed it, and then 6 to 8 months later, it happened again. And they're like, you're just going to have to buy OEM gaskets, because the ones that come with the exhaust are garbage. So I'm like, oh, all right, okay. So under warranty, I ended up paying for different gaskets, because the crap ones that they had with it weren't up to the task. Now it sounds like a normal car again.
So mine busted on the pipe itself. Like there's a few holes in the the whole exhaust pipe that goes from a little bit towards the front of the car all the way to the back. And they're brand new. Not even a year old.
Yeah, that's how it
It's
happens.
insane.
Same happened to my wife's TT. We had new brake lines, and we took it in a couple of days ago for MOT, like a test that you have to do here to certify the car is roadworthy. And they said the brake lines are corroding. We're like, what? We had them done last time we had the car fixed, and it's been sat in the garage ever since. We're like, yeah. What are you going to do?
Now that's entropy. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Do you still put salt on your roads over there, Nathan?
Yes.
Would that be part of the reason why there's that corrosion going on?
Not on a car that's not being used, no. It's a sports car. We took it away in the winter. It's too lethal to drive in the winter. It's too powerful. Just end up crashing it. So we decided a long time ago to just put it away after we tuned it and got it faster than it was. And we're like, okay, now it's become a summer car. You can't drive it in winter because it'll kill you. So it just gets put away. And then in summer, it very rarely comes out because you can't fit the kids in it at the moment because you can't fit the car seats in. So until they're old enough to just sit on the back seat of the little tiny sports car very uncomfortably, it doesn't get any use. So no, it's just sat in a garage, rotting, as cars do.
Yeah,
when
but
you don't use them.
you should take it out for a spin every now and then, Nathan. You know, you can't just leave it there.
Yeah, I've had broken ribs for the last 5 months though. Getting into a sports car and what you want to do when you've got broken ribs.
I hear you.
So yeah, I asked my wife to do it. She did. She drove it around once, or maybe twice. I forget. But you know, typically, yeah, I'd just go down. But even getting in the damn thing is painful, or it was.
What may have happened is there could have been salt on it when you put it in the garage, and it was just left there as opposed to washed off. You know, because normally, if you think about the winter in Britain, there's salt probably going up onto the underneath of the car, but it's also being washed off, often by rainwater and then obviously underbody washes and stuff like that. Whereas if the salt just stayed on it while it was sitting in the garage, that might have not helped the corrosion. As well as that, a car sitting idle is more likely to be in bad condition than a car that's been driven constantly. You know,
I totally agree.
Idle,
no, I totally agree. No, I mean, now that I'm a bit better, I will be driving it around every now and again. At the very least, sort of taking it around the block, just maybe once every couple of weeks, just to keep it ticking over. And then when it's put away, the battery will be disconnected.
And when you say around the block, do you mean like Manchester, Newcastle, London, and back home?
No. That's round the country.
Is that a long block? What Brian just said?
Yeah, that's.
How long would that take?
A day and a half. I only know that from being a rep. I used to drive all over the country all day, every day.
How long would it take you to drive across England?
I've done from here in the Midlands to Scotland and back in a day to visit a dealer. So I set off at 6 o'clock, went and visited the dealer midway through the afternoon, did the visit, sold him whatever I needed to sell him, got back in the car, drove home.
It's 3,000 miles from New York to California. There's no way you could do that in a day. My cousin's husband used to do it every summer. He would get there in about 2 days. And that was pushing an IROC Z to the max.
I mean, from John O'Groats to Land's End, there's people who've done it in a day. That's the full length from the furthest to the furthest point. You can do that. If you're getting a lick on and breaking a lot of the laws of the road, then you can do it in a day. For me to do it, I had to do 174 at some points. So I was just absolutely nailing it, basically, on the motorway down. Just foot to the floor, let the car go as fast as it can possibly go. All the radar detectors on. You know, that's how you do it in a day. You do over 150 miles an hour for the majority of the journey.
Wow, that's some serious speed. What kind of car were you driving?
It's an S5.
Yeah, that'll do it all right.
It's supposed to be limited. So when I got it as a Repmobile, I didn't pay for the limiter to be taken off it. So as far as I was concerned, it had a top speed of 155. That was what the limiter was supposed to kick in at. But after I did that, I asked the garage, So they said, have you stretched its legs? Because it was a first service or something. It was quite a new car. And I was like, yeah, definitely. And they're like, well, how fast could you get it? And I told them. And I explained that the clock was miles out, because the clock said I was doing 190. And it's only because I had all the telemetry gear that I could see exactly what speed I was doing, 174. And he was like, yeah, that's what they'll do. He's like, that's what they do when they're... I said to him, why didn't it stop at 155? Isn't it limited? It's like, nah. They say they're limited. And if someone's stupid enough to pay to have the limiter removed, then they'll say it's been removed. What a joke.
Wait a second. Did you say you were doing 190?
That's what the clock on the car said.
But you were actually doing 174 miles per hour.
Correct. It was a mile out.
That's still crazy speed. I don't think I've gotten past 110. I've never driven a car past 110.
Never
Because they can't
110
handle it.
today.
Depends how much you're driving, I suppose. Nathan, you realise that was 30 miles an hour off of the speed of a Lamborghini Countach. They could go.
Yeah, I used to
208.
rattle off those stats to people when I was the big dick sales rep with the fast car. They'll be like, yeah, it's fast as a Lamborghini. No, it ain't. I've driven a Lamborghini. No, it ain't. A Lamborghini's a totally different experience. We only got 5 minutes before the live show and I want to get a coffee, so talk amongst yourselves.
So, Brian, what's the fastest you've driven a car?
I don't know, Neil. I'd say I was going 120, but maybe less, actually, to be honest with you. I'll be honest with you, I don't have trust in cars enough to go very fast. As well as that, I don't want to go 120 miles an hour into someone else. But I suppose if you're in Britain where there's a lot of people going very fast, if you have a sports car that's designed to do that, you could do it.
Yeah, that's my point. Everything I drove, there was nothing that could handle more than 110. But if I had a nice car that could handle it, I would open it up. Shoot, yeah.
See, I like saloons, and saloons are built for basically families or businessmen where I drive an Audi A6. It's an older one, but the point is I can get from 0 to 60 fast if it needs to. They're good on fuel, that kind of thing, and they're a big car and blah, blah, blah. And there's plenty acceleration there. Very, very, very good acceleration considering the size of the engine as per the weight of the body. But, I mean, even at that now, that would easily go well over 100 miles an hour, but I never really did go over 100 miles an hour with it because I just didn't. As soon as you start hitting 90 miles an hour, I'm kind of going, this car is built to be a saloon car. It's not really built. It's built for handling motorways and dealing with that stuff, but it's not really built to be a Lamborghini, is it? So not that it would come apart. It's just it doesn't have that grip on the road, I would say. That kind of way. Handling, maybe.
Are you still talking about cars?
Yeah, we can change the subject now, though.
No, not at all. Do you remember Top Gear when Clarkson and Hammond and May were on it? Well,
I do, yeah.
Clarkson gave the best description for the difference between a Ferrari and a Lamborghini once on one of the shows. So he said, you go around a bend in a Ferrari with a very serious look on your face. You're concentrating on getting the line just right. You're right on the balance of losing the back end and not losing the back end and all that sort of stuff. It's very, very serious business driving a Ferrari. You go around a corner in a Lamborghini gurning and screaming. Going, woohoo! Yay! So I did a track day and got to use both. Various other cars as well, but the two that stood out the most were the Lamborghini and the Ferrari. And exactly as Clarkson described it, I remember it being just starting to rain. So what I thought was the limits of grip were not quite. I was a little bit off, and the back end on this Ferrari was on a hairpin was starting to come out, and the instructor says it is just starting to rain. You're gonna have to ease off a little bit, and it's a very serious business. Now I drove that first, then got in the Lamborghini, right, and by then it was raining, right, and went around the same hairpin doing a 4-wheel power slide with all 4 wheels spinning, going woohoo, and the guy next to me, the instructor, going more gas, get the wheels spinning more. So you're going around the corner much slower, sideways, all 4 wheels spinning in the wet, just going woohoo. Just a totally different experience.
Nice.
I always prefer
So
the Lamborghini.
So the Lamborghini handles better? Is that what it is?
No, not at all. The Ferrari handles better. So round that bend,
I got you.
Round that bend, you're concentrating in the Lamborghini. You're trying to get it just right to keep on the edge of the grip that the car's got, which is super fast through a hairpin. You might not sound fast, but sort of 40 or 50 miles an hour through a hairpin is incredibly fast, right? And the Ferrari you can feel that it's doing it. It likes it. It wants to do more, right? You just got to get the balance. Well, you're thinking about those things as opposed to the instructor next to you going, now plant it so all 4 wheels spin in the wet round the bend. It's just a different type of driving. You drive a Lamborghini for a laugh. You drive a Ferrari because you're a serious person. You can get that extra quarter of a second out the track time and all that sort of stuff.
I'd still prefer a Lamborghini.
The ops car. Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Brian's Logic, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Woohoo!
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for introducing yourself from Discord, as we didn't get much from you in the pre-show.
Yeah,
Excellent.
wake up, Discord.
Yeah, excellent. Just the kind of response I wanted. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known? Make sure that you know who this is. Sleeping Warrior. Of course I know who he is. Why is it giving me that warning that I should know who the person is? I suppose maybe people let their links out like they did back in the day and get porn bombed. Hey, Anthony.
He's from Liverpool.
Oh, I know why it gave me the warning. It's because it's somebody from Liverpool. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh.
You never walk alone.
Do you trust this person? Are you really sure? I know they're on your friends list. I know you've communicated them before, but the guy is from Liverpool. Therefore, caution should be taken.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we do. Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Anthony.
It's just new PC, new setup, making sure things are working. It seems to be working. Woo!
Excellent. Almost same here. Yeah, it gave me a warning before you joined the show, which is the first. I don't think I've ever seen that before, Anthony. It was saying, this person's definitely dodgy. You should be aware. If you're not, I'm going to let you know. So, G+, let me know how dodgy you were.
I think it's because I've got a new VPN and I've not turned it off. If you notice, it's not simple.
That makes more sense. Okay, well, that's not quite as amusing. Can you help out with
No.
housekeeping, as you haven't been on for a while?
Go on.
Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth, Anthony, or anybody else in G+ or Discord? Or join in the chat if you're watching live. Very warm welcome to you all.
It's only in the maths, isn't it? If you calculate it into a geometric edge and then make an adjustment for refraction and call it a non-geometric edge that's refracted, then it only appears in the maths. That's literally where it comes from.
Yep, math based off a flat plane, though.
That's correct. I don't know if Anthony's well up to date with the whole elevation angle argument. I'm pretty sure he is.
I've been half listening. It's like I'll catch it one day, miss it another day, catch it another day, miss it another day.
John signed in on one of his kids' account. Kid's been using the computer for gaming, eh, John?
As long as you're not displaying yourself as a cat, John. Did you see that lawyer in America that turned up to a hearing as a cat filter on his computer?
Oh, how highly unprofessional. Yeah, my kid's been using the computer. I'm really sorry, Your Honour.
Did you not see it, Nathan?
I'm sure I have caught that at some point. Yes, it does sound familiar.
Hilarious.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? Again, feel free to join in if you're in the chat and the live stream.
Axial rotation. Well, there's a problem there because one of the globe claims, it's a begging the question fallacy, but one of the globe claims is that pilots fly, and I think ships also use great circle routes, right? Which means that they have to completely avoid the South Pacific for no particular reason. So they all fly great circle routes. So how could you fly a great circle route, right? And how could you claim great circle routes and also claim globiolus, right? Which would mean trying to follow that line into different latitudes. How could you ever follow that distance in that line and also deal with out rotation underneath it?
Well, you wouldn't, in the respect that you're describing it. You'd have to. Your whole outlook on travel through the air would be very different. So what we have, when you say Great Circle Route, there's many different routes that planes take, and they're like roads. In other words, they stick to pretty much set, coordinates in terms of where they're going to go from where to where, the waypoints as they call them. Well, they're like roads in the sky, aren't they? They're just travelling a set, from here, then to airport. Well, that type of travel would be completely different if Earth was turning beneath things in the air, as is claimed to be the case on a sphere Earth that's spinning. We're claimed to have Coriolis drift. Well, if that was the case, then you wouldn't ever want to travel anything other than west for a start, because you'd never get there.
Yeah, but they have this claim of globiolus, which involves north-south flights supposedly being affected, right? Not east-west. No, there's no east-west problems. In their globiolus, it's only north-south. Now, they have absolutely no data or evidence to ever prove that, and it's debunked by any flight that goes north-south. But the point is that their claim doesn't work with Great Circle routes, because the Great Circle route is supposed to be the best and shortest route. So, which means a plane starts at this point, at this time, and ends up at this point, this other point, at this other time. And that's the exact distances that they're flying, and it has that exact speed, an exact average speed, and whatever else for it to get from point A to point B in a straight line distance, right? Which would be a curved line for them. But the point is that Great Circle routes and globiolus can't work together.
Well,
you can't have two. Go on.
Between 2 points, A and B, straight line, right? But the only reason that a great circle route exists is to create it on a ball. But this thing doesn't happen. When we navigate, we go to a straight line between 2 points. But this is just a reification or a rug pull, really, that you're taking this straight line, and the only time it ever becomes circle is when you place it into the heliocentric ball model. There is no circle. There is no continuance of it around the ball. It's just assumed that. But fundamentally, they're straight lines.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not arguing that point. I totally understand that. But in their vernacular, these are circle routes that a plane takes. But that plane goes in a straight. When I say straight, it follows a line, right, without deviation, and it gets from point A to point B, which is an exact distance along that line, in the exact time it would take them at the speed they fly to go that exact distance. But then they also turn around and claim globiolis, which means that there is a north-south deviation happens with their globiolis. My point is that they can't claim great circle routes and globiolis together, because one debunks the other. You can't have a great circle route where you get from point A to point B following this circle line and this exact distance at the exact speed that you're going for the exact time it takes, and also be dealing with a change in rotation speed underneath you. I know it's globiolis, it's nonsense. But the point is that they can't claim both at the same time because they contradict each other. That's my point.
So just for the audience's benefit, globiolis is the claim of an anti-flat earther. Now, somebody in the comments, I can't credit them because I can't remember who it was that said this, but somebody asked me in the comments of my own video, what's the difference between a glober and an anti-flat earther? And before I got a chance to reply, somebody from the comment section replied and said, a glober sticks to the globe rhetoric, an anti-flat earther doesn't. And I thought that is a very good summary. So when we talk about globiolis, we're talking about a claim that flies in the face of the actual globe rhetoric claim, which is Coriolis effect, which we don't experience. But because we don't experience, they have to beg the question that we turn with Earth and atmosphere turning together, but simultaneously have a drift that's experienceable from the projectile, in the projectile, when travelling north or south. Now this is a anti-flat Earth claim, not a globe claim. Globiolis is what we fondly named it, or Brian fondly named it.
You got to think of the anti-flat earthers as like DJs. They're the ones who like to remix the story and have their own story and debate that, as opposed to sticking to the mainstream. They're the DJs of the party. Good morning, guys.
Some bad DJs.
Yep.
And they throw Neil
They only
deGrasse
play
under
the
bus.
shitty records, right?
Well, they like to keep playing the same record as much as possible. That's for sure.
But there is a bigger divide between globe believers, that's standard normies who might have an interest in cosmology, or, I don't know, astronomy, and they've just got a vague interest in the subject and have retained whatever they were taught in school about the globe. That's a globe believer or glober, if they come here to debate it. That's what we'd term them as. Whereas there's a wide, massive, great big cavity between that, i.e. somebody who just claims, yeah, of course Earth turns underneath for us to observe Coriolis drift. That's what globe claims. And somebody who says, no, Earth and atmosphere are assumed to turn together in violation of several natural laws. And the effect we observe when we violate these natural laws in our description of something that doesn't happen. Blah, 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 blah. So that's a big difference. A very stark difference when you come to Coriolis effect, because they're denying the effect in the first instance. There's less of a divide between your normie average person who's a globe believer and, say, a Scientologist than there is between a normie globe believer and an anti-flat earther. There's a bigger difference between anti-flat earth and globe believing and globe believing and Scientology. Scientology is much, much closer to actual globe rhetoric than anti-flat earth is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Nathan, you actually coined the term globiolis, not me. I made a video and I detailed it, but you coined the term.
Oh, really? Oh, copyright Nathan Oakley 2019, whatever it was that I copyrighted it.
I'm sure it was Arwen.
I'm sure Brian thought about it 2 weeks before I did.
No, I specifically objected against it. I did.
That was it.
Fair enough. Let's move on. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
What is the sun?
I don't know.
It's
Well-
over there. We got an angle, and that's it.
We do have an angle to it. Elevation angle. Doesn't mean we have its height, though. What's the distance? Anybody? Feel free to join in from Discord. Anybody know the distance to the sun?
Well, if the tailway speed of light has been measured, and sun rays come in parallel due to that measurement being correct, and angles are possible off of a curved baseline, and the horizon is geometric.
It's falling apart, this, Brian.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So no, I don't have that name.
Wow, that's a hell of a list, man.
Okay, let's work our way through that. Okay, what was the first one?
The first one was if the tailway speed of light has been measured.
Okay, has the
Which
two-way
it hasn't.
speed of light been measured? Or the one-way?
No,
What about the one-way speed
No.
of light?
no.
Okay, so next up, well, it was actually last on the list. If we have a geometric horizon, do we have a geometric physical leading edge of a sphere called Earth curve for a horizon?
No, we don't.
Only
Strike
the
two.
You said if we can measure an elevation angle from a curved baseline, is there any evidence you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
No, there isn't.
There was
Strike
one
three.
more.
metrically impossible.
There was one more that I've missed, Brian.
Parallel sun rays.
Oh yes, do sunlight
Parallel light
rays
rays.
come in parallel?
No, they don't.
Well, that's a big problem then. If you've got to have all of those things in your back of your mind first to give you distance to the sun, then I'm not buying any of it. Wouldn't the distance also involve the derivation of dual radii by way of a flat plane elevation angle measurement to Polaris, then imposed on Venus? Also,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not looking good for anybody who thinks they know how far the sun is. Any Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, you
Uh,
you
my-
require
my-
a naturally occurring phenomena.
My
That you can
hostile
actually vary.
witness. My hostile witness will be the man himself, Newton. I feign no hypothesis. Thank you.
If, right, you were able to leave the surface of a spinning sphere and maintain your tangential speed, wouldn't that supposed force have an effect on you? Straight
Supposed
line?
force? Sorry, do you want to clarify what you mean by supposed force?
As in it's not real. But if I was to go into accepting all sorts of bits, like tangential retention of speed, as soon as I fly off on a straight line on a ball, that force that apparently was keeping me there will adjust my tangential speed. So I would never have a tangential speed. That would always be pulled down, wouldn't it?
It's the conservation of stationary momentum.
You got it. You get, this is the trouble. If they have these things, then they make the other claims. So we were talking about differential Coriolis or globiolis there, yeah? So they have that to make up for the fact that flight times aren't. So they make a weak excuse up. But the consequence of it is first of all, to deny what conservation of linear momentum is, then they'll confuse it. But in wrapping that up, if you live in a world with G, it does have an impact on that. If you're traveling in a straight line and the ground underneath you is curving away because you've maintained a tangential speed, then that G will have negative effects on your tangent. It will stop it being. It'll make a curve, won't it?
Yes. It's a big problem. You'd have to account for it if there was a force that isn't really a force, but you can think of it as a force, and if you did and it was, it would present problems. But it doesn't. Happy days.
But the point being, it would be applicable in what Brian was talking about in terms of globiolis. If you were going to do that, then you would have to incorporate it in that. It wouldn't just be the differential of the tangential speed based on your London latitude. It would be counted by how long you've been there, how much that's affected it, and how much it's burnt through your carried on tangential.
And it wouldn't last forever.
Well,
you know, you'd
But
have
it does in their world, doesn't it? That's another contradiction. When you see Lewin and that doing it in the labs with a little train track and you pop the ball up, or Fireman Dan with his guys on a trampoline, doesn't last forever, but it does in their world. It does for an aeroplane. It's constantly going sideways at 1,000 miles an hour if it's flying north to south.
just happens to be tracking the ground below it in violation of the first law, increasing its velocity like the air.
Well, yeah, I mean, the airplane has to, if you're talking about linear speeds per latitude, you're talking about a breakdown of the distance around that latitude as a miles per hour speed. So if you started off at the 60th parallel north and you were flying south to the equator, then you would have to be heading, like, you would have, if you were going from London to Lagos, let's just say, you'd have to take off in your plane, somehow take off on a rotating globe, and you'd have to, according to like Globiolis, you would have to head straight out over Schiphol in the Netherlands and straight for, let's say, Asia or the Middle East to meet up with Lagos. That would have to be your flight path. You couldn't fly due south to Lagos. It just would be impossible, because when you get there, you'd be in America or something, South America or something. Do you know what I mean?
Different continents are coming to you as you fly through the air. Well, your observation of that from the ground, if you could see the aeroplane, is the effect of it seeming to take a curve when really it's you moving beneath. That's the actual claim the globe makes, Coriolis effect. But when we point out that from the ground planes don't drift because Earth's turning underneath them, they have to come up with an excuse for why we don't see the effect the globe claims will have. Hence the transition from globe believer to anti-flat earther in their defiance of the claim that we have drift, 15 degrees an hour of it. We don't, but because we don't, they have to make an excuse and assume that Earth's turning anyway, and that the item leaving Earth will retain its angular momentum. Completely absurd, because as Adam's just detailed, it would be linear. It would come off and fly off in a straight line if you're going to claim it's conserving anything. Certainly not angular, because that would mean that it's rotating after it leaves the ground.
Stationary
momentum.
Yeah, but they're not even claiming angular momentum. They're actually claiming linear momentum. They actually do claim linear momentum, the anti-flat earthers. They can't claim angular momentum.
Right, they've claimed linear with the
west.
title angular. I realise they are claiming linear, but they're saying angular.
Well, no, I've come across this with a load of them. They won't say which one. They either won't say which momentum they're claiming to be conserving, or they say linear. They can't say angular because that would be a rotation, right, from west to east.
But they don't have a description of what they describe, because what they're actually describing is something leaving a rotating platform and then staying directly above whatever portion it's supposed to stay above if nothing's affecting it in any way, shape or form other than the engines pushing it along, which is what they experience. Well, they say no, it's not that we're supposed to experience anything that the globe's having take effect on it, unless you go from this latitude to that latitude. Then you'll experience a very minor deflection that you can easily counter in the plane. It's like, so the plane's countering it, we're not seeing anything, there's no drift to observe, there's no Coriolis effect, and it's not even possible to experience when we're travelling west. Okay, where does it say that in terms of globe rhetoric when they claim Coriolis effect, which is very specific? You observing things drift from a non-inertial turning reference frame, claimed to be Earth. That just doesn't happen. Shout out to Godzilla37 who says, this super chat is for Virus and includes all the globe proof he has. Okay, done. Thank you for the super chat, Godzilla37.
Well, the thing about it is this, right? There's a couple of reasons why they can't claim, the anti-flat earthers can't claim angular momentum. One of them is that to retain angular momentum, you need to be physically attached to the rotating body, right? Number one. Number two, they have to claim linear momentum because their conservation of linear momentum, because their globiolis is involving miles per hour, right? Which is a linear speed, right? So that's two reasons that they have to claim linear momentum. But there's another, exactly what you just said a minute ago, Nathan. If you ask any of them to show any evidence for any of this absolute total and utter horse manure, right, they'll tell you that some pilot like Wolfie just, makes the odd little adjustment on the joystick or whatever. When you're flying, just like a degree adjustment every couple of hours, just a little degree to the left or whatever. Do you know what I mean? This is the best they'll come up with. Like, they'll never produce any actual flight data that supports any of this nonsense. But they'll say that Wolfie accounts for it. And Wolfie will also claim to account for this not actual drift, if we all remember. They're crazy.
Right. Yeah, nuts. Until somebody understands what Coriolis is and calls them on it. Should we move on from gravity, as we've kind of got into and out of gravity while we were talking about Globiolis / the globe claim that doesn't happen of Coriolis effect at 15 degrees an hour? So, scientific evidence of gravity, I'll assume the answer is no. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Never.
No, there can't be. It's not possible.
No, they could, but they won't, because then they lose their happy little sandbox.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
How could they, Arwen? How could they manipulate their independent variable?
By threading outside of their presuppositional model.
Yeah, but how did they? Give me a claim they would make, and then describe how they would manipulate their independent variable.
Go black holes, Arwen. Black holes.
Yeah, but that's only existent within their heliocentric presuppositional model. So,
orbiting binary
that's
stars.
not gonna
There you
be
go.
real.
Orbiting binary stars. There you go.
And binary stars, well, can you see them actually? Or is that just a rendering on some supposed telescope named Lucifer or something?
Let's take it as read that we can see them.
Okay. Well, if you're going to take it as read that you can see things, then you can't really very
Fine,
manipulate
bloody
the phenomena.
Ganymede falling around then as a moon in
What?
an assumed orbit. Just any light in the sky, Arwen. Bloody hell, I'm trying to move the conversation along here. It's like pulling
Okay,
teeth.
well, light in the sky. Look, like what causes starlight? Try to figure it out, right? Very manipulate magnetic situations. If you like create a different frequency type of magnetic fields or even sonic fields, maybe you could like somehow neutralize the starlight for you as an observer within that field, and that way you could very manipulate it locally.
But that doesn't. You're
That's
talking
not
about
part of their presuppositional model. Yes, I know.
Yeah,
That's
but you're missing the point, though. But you're missing the point. That only might block something out for you, but that doesn't tell you what the star is or what the light is from the star. It's just you found out you can block the light here using these techniques.
Hold on a
That doesn't
second,
tell
hold
you
on.
what the
physically
light is.
blocking
Hold
it,
on,
though.
hold
It
on.
will
Let me get this
definitely
straight.
reveal the nature.
Hold on.
Yeah, but you're not very
Hello, is the claim cause it being blocked out? So let me get it straight. If I look at Jupiter and then close my eyes and then I open them again, are you saying that the cause of it is me opening and closing my eyes?
No, specifically not physically blocking it, but like neutralizing the emanation effect.
Neutralizing the emanation sounds a lot like making it go away by closing my eyes, though, doesn't it?
It's the same
Well, you
thing.
can think of it like, oh well, you guys are obviously taking this into farcical ground, so I'm going to stop my attempt.
Farcical? You just said it was neutralizing the emanation.
Yeah, that sounds like it needs Star Trek theme music.
You need a Death Star for that.
Shout out to Mandela Effect Jonathan Bardsley. Hopefully I've said your name correctly. What's putting the air under pressure other than its own weight? Weight? Nothing, then it doesn't need a barrier because it's not pressurized. Gas is always pressurized. It's moving around at high velocity, and when it collides with something, it imparts a pressure. That's what pressure is. But without the container, there can be no pressure. The bit that intrigues me, Mandela Effect Jonathan Bardsley, is your association with weight. What's putting the air under pressure other than its own weight? Air doesn't have weight. Gases aren't weighed. How do you weigh a gas? You don't. You can weigh the container that you put a gas in, and you can put a over-exceeding amount, i.e. a high pressure in there, i.e. a high quantity in there, and then the container will weigh more. But the moment you open the container, the gas fills the space because it travels in all directions. Weight is down. Gas isn't going down, go boom, boom, to weigh it. Thank you for the super chat, though. Hopefully I answered your question if it was one.
Liquids and solids with weight, but when we try to quantify gases, we use volume and pressure.
Yeah, weight.
But it's all
Sorry,
downward pressure, though, with the weight and gravity.
But weight is defined within gas, within the medium of air. That's how we define weight. We define weight within that medium. Do you know what I mean? It's not that medium is going down as well. It's like, no. Objects weigh more in a vacuum. So that's the end of that. Do you know what I mean? Gas doesn't have weight. It goes around in all directions. There's no singular downward vector. It's total nonsense.
Yeah, but they go in all directions, but they also go down.
Pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, but the pressure.
Let's just address that. Hold on, Brian. Sorry. Arwin throws these things in that demands that I then address them. Yes, all directions includes down. How much does a gas particle going up weigh?
Well, it goes until like the thinness of the mesh becomes too much for it, and then it's kind of like slowed down because eventually it will be pulled back down to weigh on the whole mesh.
Give it me in grams.
Roughly 1 gram per cubic meter.
1 gram per cubic meter. So I take a cubic meter, presumably contained, of standard gas. That would be to say I seal up a box without doing anything, right? Now, all of the gas inside there is all moving in all directions. Now, if I put a scale under the box, I'm weighing the box. But if I put a scale in the box, there's not only gas hitting the scale, not doing anything because it's a standard atmospheric pressure. Atmo what now? But it's also going up. So you can't have a gas weigh a certain gram amount only when it hits the scale, but then what, it doesn't weigh anything when it goes in the opposite direction? It's a negative weight? It's just absurd.
Yeah.
The thing, and just to address that, the particles at the point they're in contact with the surface at any point will add to the overall weight. Whether they're hitting the top or the bottom at that point, they're contained within it. They're not really lifting it up. Yeah, they're stretching the skin. They're not applying an upward force because the balloon's just sat there, isn't it? So whatever's in it, yeah, there will be some component of its weight because at some point molecules are in contact with the surface, the container. But as you say, Nathan, those ones in the middle, they're not exerting anything anywhere.
But the objects weigh more in a vacuum and less in air. So there is some kind of, I have to use the word buoyant effect with air, very small amount, due to the movement of the air.
Right.
They're different things, aren't they? Differentiating between weighing the balloon and the differential of the convention that whenever we weigh something, it is in the medium of air.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what Brian started off with. Exactly. Quick shout out to Chris Berry, who says, water vapour is not gas, end quote. Phil Bell, 2019. Indeed, Chris. Thank you very much for the super chat. Also, Adam Price, who says, episode 1666. Burn him. Thank you,
Nathan. Can I give the global rebuttal to what your point was when you said gas molecules are continuously moving around in all available directions evenly? They say, yeah, but we've got a gradient, Nathan. If what you were saying is correct, it would mean that all the gas, there would be no gradients. It would be evenly distributed, evenly across the whole sky, and it's not.
But that's where temperature comes in. Exactly, Arwen, temperature. Temperature gradient gives us a pressure gradient.
Right. The whole dynamic of it moving in all directions is still that effect is going to be influenced by temperature that is locally introduced. So it's going to change where that temperature is, the entire dynamic of how it is spreading out. And that's how the gradient forms.
Okay, let's just qualify what Anthony's asking before I try and attempt to answer it. Sorry, you're asking about a gas pressure gradient. Now, let's all just assume we all understand what gas is. What's the pressure bit mean when referring to gas, Anthony?
It means pressing.
The force the gas exerts on the walls of its container.
Yes, it's got to press against something.
So we've got gas, and the pressure, that would be the force it applies on the walls of the container, and then the gradient that would be formed after you press on the container to have gas pressure to form a gradient. So after containment comes gas pressure, and after gas pressure comes gas pressure gradient. So it's a delta of the original antecedent consequent relationship, which requires containment then.
Yeah, but Nathan, you've swerved my question. My question was, we live in a gradient, and you haven't addressed the gradient bit. You've talked about pressure, but you've not addressed the gradient.
Fine. There's more gas at ground level because that's where it's produced. Obviously, in line with entropy, that would be gas dispersion. That's an entropic effect, aka the second law of thermodynamics. As the gas leaves the ground and disperses into the availability of volume, it becomes more diffused. That's entropy. By essence, that's what an entropic effect is.
I've got a postulation.
Hang on. Let me respond to that. So Bolas would then say, well, if there's more gas at ground level, that's entirely consistent with the gravitational model.
No.
Gas go down, go boom, boom. That's consistent with gravitational bending pseudo-Riemannian force space-time in Einsteinian geometry. No, it isn't.
No, but they say that because it matches their model, they say that it's gravity. They say gravity pulls it back.
Oh, yeah. Where in their model's
how
gravity?
does it do that?
Show me in their model. You'll have a struggle to get to that bit. Where there's gravity applied. Show me that. Not an equation. Show me applied to a model. You won't even find a model.
No, you'll just find some maths.
Right, and if you find a picture...
Gas behaviour does not include any mitigation for...
Correct.
This is where they would then say, without...
Let Adam just repeat. Hold on. Just let Adam repeat that so everyone can hear what you just said. Go ahead, Adam.
The model of gas behaviour has no accommodation for effects of gravity. Molecules move freely in all directions. They're not subject to any additional force, be it downwards, upwards, left or right.
As a follow-up question before Anthony goes,
Can I?
and in the heliocentric model, is it applicable with the second law of thermodynamics or gravitational quote-unquote laws? Which one's applicable to globe Earth?
It's gravitational. It contradicts.
Go ahead, Anthony, then Brian. Or was that it?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking Adam. What was the question, Nathan?
No, that was it. You came up with the final rebuttal, which is to say it's in line with our model, and gravity would make gas go down, go boom, boom. Therefore, no containment required. And if we didn't have gravity, we wouldn't have the gas pressure gradient. They've all been addressed now, unless there's any follow-up.
Well, I would like to throw something in there just for the audience.
Yeah, why not?
Go on, sure, I'll do it. As a basic, gas is given, this is how it's described, kinetic energy by temperature. So the warm and temperature also takes kinetic energy away from the gas. So warmer gas moves more and is more expanded, and gas that's cooled down moves less and is more contracted. So all the little gas, as they were described, molecules, right, all start moving less and all start coming together more with cold temperature. And warm temperature, all these little gas molecules, as it's described, move around more and move apart from each other more. So you have a situation where you have warm at ground level that rises, and that warm air then cools down, becomes more dense, and flows back down the way, replacing the warm air that's down there that's rising up. It becomes a cycle. That cycle is known as convection. Now, air from the ground up and above 10 miles up and up into the stratosphere, as they call it, stratosphere, the stratus plane. There's more going on than that, but you can't have any of these things, temperature, pressure, or vacuum, without a container. The container is the antecedent of all those three things. And we do have a low grade vacuum very high up in the sky, but we couldn't have that if we didn't have a sun and a container and gas.
The stratification of the air as we go up and we talk about these gradients, all of the gases, we'll say, whatever the temperature range throughout, irrespective of height, all of the gases behave as gases. But one of the other components, water, doesn't. It's subject to phase changes. So if you get up really high, there's no way it can last, and you'll see the amount of water. Now, as I said, water is also a universal solvent, so it helps maintain gases as well. This is why you've got, when you
can you explain that? Sorry, I know those words, but I don't know how they link together. Universal solvent. Can you explain what you mean? Sorry to interrupt. Flo.
Yeah, so it will both dissolve in stuff and dissolve into it. So it helps keep stuff. The water's a very weird thing in all of its phases. It doesn't behave like anything else. So what I'm saying is, where water is applicable within the atmosphere plane at whatever levels, where it's available to be as vapor and not a solid, it will help retain gases, so increase local pressure in that, because it's absorbing, it's dissolving some of the gases in it. So when water's taken out, that's why there's going to be a reduction in pressure there, because they've not got the ability to dissolve. Like I said, this was just something theoretical. I don't know how you would demonstrate it, but from my understanding of how water behaves and interacts with gases, that will contribute to some of the density variations, the humidity. The more humid stuff, you're going to get denser air. So that could have an effect as well if you're trying to comprehend meteorology, because that's what you're talking about at this point now, as opposed to just sticking with the fundamentals of what defines gas pressure. If you're going to then apply it to our air and all of the other systems, it's not just a box of air, is the point I'm making. It's a very complex system which has many different cycles in it, all of which will contribute to these gradients. Gas starting at the ground is another example.
But something you just said there, Adam, you said, you mentioned humidity, but humid air is less dense, is it not? Because it has water vapor in it.
Yeah, but it's putting vapor in, isn't it? So that's exactly, yeah. But look at the amount of water in there. A lot more water in per litre of air, per decimeter cubed of air. So, like I say, it's an interplay of all of these things. It's not just as simple as stating it's X there, but fundamentally you've still got to have that premise of containment before you start to discuss the nuances of why you've got variations in things.
I'm going to ask a question that's come from the super chat. So far, thank you very much for the super chat. It says, what object can travel higher up into the air? Okay, I think I understand your phraseology. And do we know its distance? I guess the weather balloon at 24 miles up. Anyone know for sure? ? I don't know for sure, so far.
High altitude balloon, maybe around 24 to 30 miles is the max. I don't know of anything that went above that. As far as provable things, not like NASA sounding rockets and things. I'm talking about real things. There's nothing outside of high altitude balloons that I'm aware of.
How high did that public rocket go up? The one with the yo-yo mechanism that people thought it was hitting the dome.
That was like aeroplane height, weren't it?
Yeah.
Well, no, the explanation for that noise.
60,000 feet, I think, whereas balloons tend to be 110, 120, don't they? I'm not sure.
No, I think it was 200. I think it was 220,000 feet, if I remember correctly.
What, that rocket?
I think so. Yeah. I think it was. I think it set a new record for the highest. Something I'm going to find out.
Yeah, look it up, because I was under that impression. That was why people thought when it made a sort of what sounded like a bit like a sloshing noise, people were like, oh, it's hit the waters above. And then the manufacturer or the people who created it basically came back and said, no, there's a certain mechanism that's designed to counteract the spin, and it was called something like the yo-yo mechanism, and that's the noise it makes. Which I've got no reason to disbelieve.
Yeah, it was called the yo-yo de-spin mechanism, and it says it has now been officially confirmed that the CSXT Go Fast 2014 rocket reached 385,800 feet above mean sea level, 73.1 miles, and at a top speed of 3,500 miles per hour, which are both new world records. So
Yeah,
400,000.
Just for
I don't
real
believe
money,
that at all.
that's 72 miles.
Yeah, I don't believe any of that. You can look down below and see detail on the ground. If you look at high altitude balloons, you can't see that level of detail on the ground. You can't see all that.
Scale, Brian.
Yeah,
Got a zoom.
That was the
It's got a
weird
zoom.
thing with that video. As you watch it, and when they that's what they're saying, when the gyro kicks in to stabilize it, the rate of change of the ground underneath doesn't continue disappearing. Doesn't keep going further away. It's very. I'm surprised at that, Tony, because when I've looked at it, I thought that's not that high. Just from the visual image of that's not double a balloon, triple a balloon height. Do you know what I mean?
I'm with you there, Adam, on that. For me, it's just not. For me, it's not real. Yeah, there's no way they went up that high.
I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying that's what the claim is.
Well, just on the thing about water, Jared, Adam was speaking about, everything changes. That just to support what Adam's saying there. If you look into meteorology and whatever else, everything changes at what's known as the air boundary layer, which is where clouds form. Now, as I said 100 times before on the show, clouds form higher in the sky in the summer because that temperature point is higher in the sky because there's more heat. Than in the winter. In the winter, clouds form closer to the surface of Earth, which also gives insulation, let's just say, in the cold months. But after that cloud area, that basic cloud area, you go into what they call the free air or free, I'm going to say it, atmosphere. And
did I just cut them off? Did we lose Brian? Oh, we lost half the panel. What's going on? Oh, lost your network connection. Oh, well, isn't that wonderful? Trying to reconnect. Well, I'm still recording, and I've presumably not got anybody. Can you hear me in Discord?
here up to cloud level is completely different than what's after cloud level up to about 10 miles. And then it changes again at 10 miles up.
Sounds like we're bloody agreeing for once, Brian, so we'll stop.
We had a slight technical issue with the stream. We lost the stream for about 10 or 15 seconds there. I've got, it's actually Geo Shifter is the name of the YouTuber. Shout out to you, my friend. I'll stick it on again because we didn't actually get it, but I'll stick the Go Fast footage back up. I've got it on double speed. Probably won't avoid me a copyright, but there we go. Let's just see if we can... There you go. Let's slow this back down again. Settings 0.75. There we go. Maybe lower. 0.25. There we go. If you want to see this, guys, you're going to have to see it on the live stream.
Yeah, look at it now. You see, it's when you get to this point, look how things have shrunk so much, and you're expecting some rate of change to continue, but I just don't see it.
Look, at that speed, right? That rocket's going up with quite a bit of speed. So how many things do you know that's going to hit something with that kind of speed? Even a partially flexible thing is going to basically not crash and crunch the entire rocket upon some impact. Like, even if it would hit that ocean dead on with that speed, it's going to crush, right?
That's what I always had a problem with that. It's no crash.
Right, so that didn't happen.
Can I just get you to be quiet just for 1 second? That was it. I just wanted you to hear the sound.
Yeah,
That would designate a bigger sound than that. I'm sorry.
Oh, what?
Nothing.
You bloody conspirator.
when I
What would? It crashing into
When-
something or that yo-yo mechanism?
The crash. Come on.
Didn't crash
was
into
no
anything.
crash.
Something
That's the
going
point.
that fast and it's just gonna go boing. Come on.
Right. Exactly.
What does that prove? What does
Nothing.
this prove that we're
Zero.
looking at?
Nada.
That
That
Nothing.
it didn't crash into a dome or something.
It doesn't even
Exactly.
prove that, does it?
I
Yeah,
don't-
have you,
wait,
have you
hold
seen
on a
have
second.
you seen the Hennessy advert? Yeah, could just as
Yeah,
well
yeah,
be like Picard heading in. It doesn't prove anything either way. It doesn't count something in or count anything out. All it says is, I don't know what that video really is showing.
when I flew over Utah, Nevada, and into California, there was hardly no clouds, and I could see underneath me, and it looked very like what that rocket footage is showing, very like it. I mean, I was like maybe 6 miles up in the air in a commercial airliner. I just can't see how that is another 60 plus miles up. You know what I mean? For me, like, no, that just can't be.
Fair enough.
I've got a little. It's kind of linked. You're thinking about this thing spinning. We were talking about angular momentum earlier. I just want to just reiterate, if I could, just what angular momentum is. So there's this guy here. I'll just show it with a formula first. So angular momentum is the angular momentum is equal to the mass of something. What's mass? I know. Times the velocity that it's rotating times the radius. So if we change one of these parameters, it's L's going to stay the same. Okay, so if I just press the guy, look, he's going to start himself spinning. All right, so look, and what he's going to do is going to change R. He's going to reduce R, but L has to stay the same. Yeah, so if he reduces R, then he has to increase V for L to stay the same. And that's what retention of angular momentum, it relates to the body, the individual body itself. And if it changes in some way, one of these components, its angular momentum will remain the same. Well, that will necessitate, like here, if we reduce the R value, then the angular momentum will stay the same, which means its velocity will increase to compensate for that. That's what ballers are trying to say is something to do with why planes can fly sideways. But there you go.
But within their claim, their globulus claim, their claim only involves the conservation of linear momentum. The globulus claim doesn't even involve the conservation of angular momentum. Do you know what I mean? If you know what I mean, it's their globulus claim is a linear conservation of linear momentum claim. Doesn't even have the conservation of angular momentum.
It's the differential effect of the retained, your retained one at point of takeoff based on your latitude, isn't it? And then the differentials of that as you travel north and south as to how that would affect your supposed sideways speed. And that's what they call globulus, isn't it? Which is...
Yeah. You retain the miles per hour speed that's calculated off of the latitude. This is what they claim. And miles per hour is a linear thing. You're retaining it's a conservation of linear momentum they're trying to claim, which completely, the whole point of it is it completely avoids all rotation. Do you know what I mean? So there's no problem east to west, west to east, where there's going to be rotation in a rotating body. There's only an issue north to south, and that's only a little issue. That's corrected with little tiny movements of the plane's joysticks or whatever. You know what I mean? It's nonsense. The whole claim is nonsense, and they avoid the angular part as completely with that claim.
Yeah, I was going to bring up there. I seen an R value in that formula. What is that R value representative of?
it's the distance from the point of axis to the edge. So yeah.
Right.
In his case, you see, he's rotating on that chair. So his R is the distance from his center point to his extremities, the hammers. So when he brings that R in, you see, the linear momentum, angular momentum will stay the same. So,
What of it, John? Is that a problem?
Well, it seems as if they would need a radial value for that.
if you're going to apply it to Earth, yeah, you'd want an R, wouldn't you? But this is like, so this is the whole point. They can't apply it. We've laughed before. As we said, if you were going to apply that, the best you could do is that if you took off in a balloon or a drone or whatever, if it's going to retain that angular momentum, then the best it would do is rotate once every 24 hours like their supposed ball. It's not something that supports removal of or creation of lockstepedness, if you see what I mean. It doesn't account for that. It can't account for that. And it's just wiki parroted, isn't it, as a response? Whereas if you actually look at what the claim is, it's just nonsensical in relation to counteracting the effects of a rotating ball. So you don't have, also you do have lockstepedness between the two points. It just doesn't fit, does it? It's describing something very different.
Well, the whole rotating body of the globe, the whole globe Earth is rotating and has to be at a 15 degree per hour rate. Now, that means no matter what latitude you're at on a globe, every part of that globe is all one solid thing that's all rotating at 15 degrees per hour as a rate. So that is the angular rate, isn't it, of the globe Earth? It has to be, because that's what they claim. That's why they claim there's a sunrise and sunset. And why the sun moves around, 15 degrees an hour through the sky. That's their claim, because we're moving at 15 degrees an hour.
But that was what was going to be. That was going to be my next question to Adam. If that is the case, does that mean no Coriolis effect then, as the globe's claiming we've got Coriolis drift? You're just basically saying there isn't any.
Look, I'm saying I don't think I'm making that claim from that point. I'm saying
No.
You can't use angular thing to try and justify it, because it's not applicable. What that conservation of angular momentum is as I showed you, it's that. How would you apply that to different reference frames? It's not talking about different reference frames. It's talking about one thing in one reference frame, and now if you change its parameters, it changes its behavior. Not if you leave that thing that was doing something, you retain its magical properties.
Any more on this? Got a couple more minutes left of the live show.
Just to back up Adam. Yeah, exactly, Adam. Because you must be attached to the rotating body to maintain the momentum of the rotating body. You don't maintain angular momentum when you leave go. When you're holding on to, when you're a child holding on to one of those little roundabouts in these parks, when you leave go of the bars of that, you get thrown off at an angle. You don't keep going around the thing, do you?
If you jump off a roundabout, as a kid, you go flying, don't you, off into the park. What you don't do is stay there and rotate at the same speed as the roundabout that you left, or traverse on the outside of the roundabout magically.
Well, technically speaking, Adam, I mean, have
you guys? I do that.
No, hold on. Adam hasn't considered the fact that the
something?
atmosphere moves along with the roundabout, retaining the velocity of the projectile that leaves it, so you don't actually have anything happen. You just retain the velocity of the roundabout. You carry on going with it, obviously.
Unless you're tied to it with a rope. By the way, don't do that. I definitely recommend against that.
Excellent advice to round out the live show. And so with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, hit the share button, liked, commented, subscribed, hit the thanks button, hit the PayPal link, all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
What creates wind?
Question. Freaking moron.
Local air pressure differential, which is possible because there is a air pressure settling within the available volume.
Settling.
Yeah, temperature.
Gas settles, does it?
Temperature.
Yeah, in a sense, after it is expanded, it settles, then it can gradiate, it can turn into a dynamic system, but first it has to expand within the volume available.
Yeah, gas doesn't settle. It's always moving at high speed in all directions. Settling, no, that's definitely not settling. Gas doesn't do that.
It's not...
Not dust.
Okay, I don't know a better word for it. It is
It can reach equilibrium in whatever containment field it's got. That's it. I've lost connection again to them. I'm having dead, dodgy internet, I think, today.
Not to me, I haven't. I really want... I just want to say, before we go further, I really need Arwen to back up the nonsense he was saying earlier as well.
What?
What speed?
What did I do now?
Owen, question. What speed are the gas molecules moving in a 5 mile an hour wind and a 50 mile an hour wind?
The gas moving in all directions molecule model doesn't really apply to that kind of dynamic in a direct sense.
It does.
No.
They're all moving the same speed. Yeah, it's the full body, the fluid dynamic that's exerting the 5 mile an hour, 50 mile an hour. But within that dynamic, the molecules are virtually doing the same thing.
Virtually, that's right. But it's a separate deal. That's my point. Every time somebody says that, brings it up, gas moves in all directions, like every molecule goes. That's theoretical.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No,
You
it's
can't
not.
demonstrate a singular
You
molecule
can't demonstrate the converse
displacing, you
either.
can't
You
even
can't
track it.
You
right?
can't demonstrate a static gas particle. In fact, that contradicts many other thermodynamic laws, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah, but I'm not
But
claiming.
we have to accept that neither of us can physically show that visually. But
That's
what we
right.
but what we can do is look
I'm
at
not
the other
claiming a
things.
static particle, though.
Owen,
Well,
you
you're
say this
claiming
every
that.
time. Just let the opponent, not opponent, Adam, get to the end of his sentence.
If you're gonna call him the opponent, I would damn well will write.
Oh,
Opponent
wrestling.
in discussion.
Well, what are you claiming then, Arwen? Because I'm confused in terms of, because gas behavior is gas behavior. Yeah, it's only doing one thing. It's just flying around. Yeah, and it's only heading in a particular direction based on the angle it bounced off its last collision, and it'll keep going like that until it comes across somewhere. Another collision, another collision. It'll never stop, and it won't change its speed really. Yeah, unless you start to vary other things around it. It's just going to keep doing that same thing, pinging around in all directions, only based on its last collision.
All right, but that is effectively a theoretical description that is like impossible to physically demonstrate, but it's still good enough. It is the best sized up thing to describe it, and it does, yeah, it is applicable. I'm just saying it's just a model. It's something that we visualize as we're trying to focus on the gas, what it is doing. And then in our minds, it is doing that. And it can even be visualized with graphics and all that to represent that. But we never actually see that literally, because you can't trace a singular gas particle. You just can't. So it's always theoretical. I'm not claiming it was literally still. I'm just saying in relation to the action, right? It explosively expands in all directions. It has to first fill that volume. It's going to do that with great force, the expansion. And after the initial expansion, that's basically what it meant. It doesn't literally go still, but it stops the initial explosive expansion.
Okay, you're
That's what I
describing
was trying to
equilibrium,
describe.
Expansion
equilibrium
isn't-
then.
Yeah, but equilibrium is another difficult word because, well, according to that model thinking, it can't reach an equilibrium. It's always moving in all directions and all that, right? It's not really an equilibrium then. It's not balancing because it's still always moving.
The equilibrium part is connected to temperature. If it's all at the same temperature within it, if a container and all the gas within it is the same temperature, then that is an equilibrium because the pressure will be equal throughout.
That's right. But we weren't talking about that setup. We were talking about the realm, and there is a dynamic system, so it's not technically going to reach an equilibrium even after the initial expansion, right?
No, it can't.
So this is at this point just semantics. Like I'm not claiming gas like perfectly holds still as molecules. I can't prove it either way. So
Are we in the open or closed system?
closed, definitely.
Okay. So there goes everything the globe says about gas.
And therefore the rocket hit the dome.
No.
Well, see, what I want to say is totally what I want to say about the it will never reach equilibrium is true because it will never reach a consistent temperature. The temperatures are always changing.
Right. It's a dynamic system, so it can't find an equilibrium.
Yeah, the temperature gets colder up until 10 miles up, and then it starts getting warmer again. Yet there's less and less gas because it can't get past a certain point. There's only a tiny amount of gas past 10 miles, but it's getting warmer. Now, I have my own belief on that is that it's radiative heat from the sun heating something solid, a roof above it, but I can't prove it.
Or what we don't have,
you can. Yes, you can.
Well, we don't have equilibrium. We have harmony. So nature is in harmony.
Fair enough.
Very
Not
good,
very
Nathan.
scientific terminology, but yeah.
Harmony. What are we in 1968?
I like it. It was very creative, Nathan.
Playing alongside
Peace,
one another.
man.
Well,
It's like a dynamic balance. It's not perfect equilibrium, but a dynamic balance.
Yeah,
right?
dynamic
That's
balance
what
would be
harmony. Yeah.
all words that I associate with music, dynamicism, and those sorts of balances are achieved in music. And sometimes it can be jarring, sometimes it can be off-putting, sometimes it can be uplifting. That's nature. So the beautiful world that we live in has lots of musical type words that can be ascribed to it, including harmony. That we have a harmonious system that we experience. It's not in equilibrium, it's not static.
Exactly.
It's in constant flux. But the balance of that cycle you could call, in quotes, equilibrium, because it's in a constant cycle.
Right. Because sound, hold on, Neil, sound in itself is per definition not an equilibrium, because it is the disequilibrium of like the sound waves, or however you're going to describe that, that's actually causing it. But within that thing that's happening, the event, it can still find harmony. It can still be pleasing or stimulating in ways for us, right? Become harmonious, but it's not an equilibrium because it is sound per definition is the air moving within a vibrational setup.
And without sounding like
is music a language?
In a way, yes.
Yes, it is. I'm going to tell you why. I had a master musician break it down to me. He said, scary. Dun, 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 Jaws. Right? And then he described a couple of other things, other music that you would recognize, like happy, sad. Just by the tone of the music, you're communicating.
And the link back to the earth, it was going to be what, Neil?
Talking about your harmony here, your harmony word. So we might as well build a community, get a couple of folk guitars, and start harmonizing.
No, that's not what I mean. Without sounding like a hippie, the harmonious nature of the world is what I praise, almost a bad choice of words, about becoming a flat earther. The wonder that you have is very childlike once you appreciate that many of the things that you've been led to believe, and I use that word intentionally, aren't necessarily the case. Well, once you experience that, there is a childlike wonderment that the world offers at that point. For some, not for all flat earthers. A lot of them find themselves in hell. And, there's two sides to that particular part of the realisation also. Some of the flat earthers find themselves in hell. Some of the anti-flat earthers also find themselves in hell. It's a very similar hell for flatties that don't really know what they know and anti-flat earthers who don't want to.
Well, there's not an equal division, though. I'm pretty sure that all anti-flat earthers constantly are in hell, and only some flat earthers are in hell like that.
Oh,
That's a
definitely.
shitty
I would say
place to
there's a greater proportion of flat earthers that are like myself that love and appreciate the world around them more for finding this subject than there are globers equivalents in the flat earth community, i.e. miserable sods that find the world very distressing now that they've found out that they've been lied to.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, Nathan. I'd much prefer to not ever find out and just to live in wonder of it than to make stuff up just to give people an answer. What's the point?
Well,
Yeah,
we
but
all
making stuff up isn't actually finding out, though. It's just pretending you're finding out.
It's
That's
that
the problem.
cartoon with the two lines, isn't it? Awkward truth or reassuring lies. And the line for reassuring lies is far longer than the uncomfortable truth line.
It's comfortable lie and inconvenient truth.
I just want to say, does anyone find it ironic that the one person who had a problem with the word harmony was Neil? Because he's straight out of Sopranos.
Well, there was a song called Ebony and Ivory. They live together in perfect harmony. So why can't gas particles?
That's literally what I thought of.
I nearly broke into song as well at that point, and it was Stevie Wonder.
As a black Jewish,
Why would
Jewish
Stevie
Muslim
Wonder?
woman, I found that very offensive.
Why Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney and not Elton John song harmony? Come on, get with it, guys.
It's all Tavistock nonsense programming.
I have a question about it.
What is Tavistock?
Are you seriously asking me what that is?
What a great question. What is
don't know.
Tavistock?
You have to be securities licensed to give that answer, or else you're giving bad information.
Yeah, has Neil got the clearance to find this out yet, Owen?
I heard about it through the Paul is Dead movement and all of that stuff, the Tavistock and all of that social engineering nonsense. Is that true?
The town in Devon.
Yeah, it is. They're the programmers of culture. They try to set up things for people to get amused by and luring them into certain trains of thinking, presuppositions, all that. That's what Tavistock was doing. They're like a mind control programming agency, and they've been at it for quite a while. And they mostly aim at like pop music and all that.
And now a word from our sponsor, InfoWars.
Well,
Yeah,
the thing that...
Yeah,
Go
but
ahead,
you're all
Adam. Go ahead,
missing
Adam.
something here.
There's the old TV program that it's got a bit of airing recently. The Newsmen. So they write and construct the narrative. That's basically what Tavistock supposedly is doing. So you also, if you were to get conspiratorial, you would say that the release of Flat Earth was a construct of the Tavistock Institute and the control of it.
I disagree. I think
No,
that the
it's not
Flat Earth
postulating
Society
it as true.
is
Hello,
Tavistock.
why don't people pick up the subtle nuance of what Adam says, ever? It frustrates me greatly. That he's not proposing this as a position that he's fighting for, Arwin. He's giving it as an example to go on to make a point with. So to challenge him on the example he lays down first is just going to frustrate the hell out of him. Because he hasn't made his point yet. He's just laying it down as a foundation to then make a point. He's not actually arguing that. Right, Adam? Don't say yes. Don't say that you are arguing it now, please God.
No, of course I'm not. I'm trying to. That was an example just to explain to Neil what they are here. So even down to the Second World War, how you would psychologically manipulate the country into wanting to go to war with Mr. Hitler. You know what I mean? So all of those things, how you control the masses, and also what narrative is fed to the masses. That's what the Tavistock will be doing, and how to play that out, how to get to an end game. What are they?
And how most effective to employ those means of propaganda. So in British propaganda, a lot of it's done through humour, which isn't necessarily the case in a lot of other countries. This is basic propaganda. I mean, if you want to know how this works, just go and watch Whack the Dog. If you want to know how the mechanisms work, not necessarily the Tavistock
that's a good
Institute.
one.
Yeah, that's a good one. But what bothers me about that is because the Beatles are like their queen piece.
Well, hold on a sec.
Oh, so you do know what Tavistock is then?
Yes, because they say, I mean, if you have thousands of girls screaming to the point where the New York City police said they saw urine flowing down the drains like it was raining, girls just
Beatles,
wetting
isn't it?
their pants. Yeah.
But that happened
I
way
mean, that's
before
weird.
That started with Elvis. The Beatles didn't. They weren't the first ones to have that applied.
Oh my God, Arwin!
What's wrong with that?
Who made girls piss their pants first? The Beatles or Elvis?
No, but it's weird.
No, it's about
Missing the point.
faking it. The faking it, right?
I'm finding this amusing. I'm going to go along with Arwin. It's a lot more amusing.
The artificially introduced enthusiasm.
That's it.
It wasn't applied first at the Beatles. They started that with Elvis.
That's it. Focus. Major on that minor. Major on that minor. Missed the point entirely.
Hold on, but these were real people
the point
screaming.
is, whether girls were pissing their pants or not, it's irrelevant. The institutes, the media, led people to believe that this kind of hysteria was out there, that this was normalized, that you should maybe be experiencing mild incontinence when Elvis plays.
Exactly.
Yeah? This is what they're putting in to your head.
You've got to understand how the propaganda works. Did girls actually pee their pants or not? Isn't the question. Did it get reported and disseminated to the masses as being the case? Yes, it did. That's how propaganda works. Whether or not it happened is irrelevant. Doesn't matter if it happened or not.
Right. They just tell you things about them to make you idolize it.
So wait, they were tools. The Beatles were a tool.
I don't know about that either. I mean, that might be the case. As is the case with most things, right? So let's take the Beatles. We'll stick with them as an example. Does it mean that they've been engineered in the most conspiratorial way that we can describe? No, definitely not. Does it mean that once they are part of the mainstream, that they will be coerced and manipulated and used as tools? Absolutely, without question, without exception, not just the Beatles, almost anybody that makes their way into mainstream. They will be utilised in that way and spun in whatever way is useful for whoever is spinning them.
Well, here, I have one for you.
Got it.
Hold on. Maybe the conspiratorial mindset is useful for them because it keeps social groups from forming because of mistrust of the other.
That's the Hegelian dialectic. Isn't that not correct?
What it creates is it creates celebrities who end up getting depressed because they realize that they've only been a pawn in someone else's game, or they accept that and they, let's just say, try their best to fulfill the role, even though they know that it's totally false. There is, I remember watching one of the judges, not that I watched the show, but I remember it used to be on on Saturdays or something, this Britain's Got Talent, and I'm not going to say which judge, but that person's not on it now, but you could see that this judge was obviously becoming more and more depressed with being on this show, with this whole charade. And eventually the judge is gone, because it was like, this is a complete load of nonsense that I'm involved in here. It's not that I'm important. It's that the overall end product is important, which is to manipulate the public using, if I was that judge, using me as a pawn and the rest of the judges. But some of the other judges realised the same, but they didn't get depressed about it. They just kind of fulfill the role. So, you know, that's why some celebrities go off the rails and some of them stop being celebrities and some of them just disappear out of the limelight. And others then embrace it and become plastic over time.
That was deep and depressing, Brian.
Well, I just stating how it is. You know, you find out that is exactly what Nathan's saying. You, regardless of who you are, you don't need to be created in a laboratory. As long as you can fulfill a role that where you have an influence over the masses in some way, whether it be online, on television, on radio, whatever, then you will be used as a tool. And that's that, you know. And if you might find out after a while that it's not because you're important, it's because you're just a pawn.
I just want to know how Neil feels now that he realizes his beloved city, New York, was subjected to the Tavistock and the Beatles.
It's just another day.
I wasn't expecting that.
The main issue.
That's the closest Neil gets to harmony.
That's a good one, Brian.
I just still wanted to say that, like, all these pop stars and everything that are being used by the Tavistock Institute, what they really face the most is that if they really wanted to be a star originally, you want to be a star to carry out your message, your personal influence. You want to, like, better the world, have it behave better in a way that you can give an example of, right? But if you're then hijacked as an icon through corporations and like contracts to behave very specifically, and you catch on that you're being used to give an example for something else, to turn people in something that isn't useful or like isn't good for you or for your spirit. It's just good for a bunch of corporations that want to use them. That makes you feel really, really miserable, right? Because then your original dream that pulled you into doing that is going to be closed off. You're in a cage then, and you feel it. You feel your spirit's in a cage because what you wanted to do, you can't do anymore. You're locked in.
All you have is millions of pounds to make you feel better.
I was just about to give an example of that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let me just give you an example.
Yeah, but how much do you even get? You know, look at all these agents and all that, all the hassle, all these pop stars, so famous, and a lot of them didn't even get all that much money.
So on The Simpsons,
Right.
there's a character that's the equivalent of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's asked by some Greenpeace person, you know, how do you sleep at night? And his answer is, on a massive pile of money. Also,
That's funny.
Yeah, it sounds funny, but in reality, it isn't really that
okay, I've got a
helpful.
reality version as well. Okay, I've got a reality version.
Cost?
It's just the painted picture of Johnny Depp at the beginning of his trial was the poor beaten child in a poor upbringing, which may or may not be true, I don't know. And one of the aspects of his coming up through stardom as various different, 21 Jump Street and Edward Scissorhands, prior to that, he wanted to be a muso. He wanted to play his guitar. And what does he do now? He goes around touring with whatever they're called, California Evil or whatever they're called, the band that he's got that's got a whole load of ex-celebrities in it. Well, that's because that's what he wanted to do. But what did he actually do when the carrot was dangled in front of him? Do you want to do more movies? Did he chase his passion for music? No. Well, that's terrible, isn't it? I mean, he's only got hundreds of millions of dollars to show for it, and really, it's just a waste of his talent. How terrible.
Yeah, I'm willing to give up flat out as my dream and go off and do something else for hundreds of millions. And I will be sad about it later, but I won't be that sad.
Yes, you'll cry tears into your silk pillow on your giant bed of money.
Yeah.
How do you give up literally
Doesn't
what you
always work
experience
out,
every day?
Yeah, you can't really give that up, Brian. That's the one thing. Even if that's the thing, isn't it? Even if they waterboarded you and tortured you, then no matter, it's like at the end of 1984, they can beat you into the point where you think holding up 2 fingers is actually holding up 5 fingers, right? But deep down in your soul, you know the truth, and that's true of the nature of reality. for some, everyone on this panel, I'd say. But I don't know if we're in the majority in that regard. People constantly tell me about how flat Earth's growing and blah, blah, blah. But how many flat earthers actually know that they're on a flat plane? I doubt it's a huge number.
Probably just us.
No, I agree, Nathan. Most of them believe it or want it to be the case. Or they know it can't be a globe, but they can't accept that it's actually flat. I think that's a lot of it. They can't just accept it. Whereas I know it's flat. I don't have to try to accept it. I know you know it.
Yeah, it's a very different state of mind.
You got to be fair to these people. They know it's not a ball. They know it's flat. They just don't know how to debate it. Maybe like the people who follow the show. So where they lack is the confidence in debating it. They'll say, "Look, I just know it's flat. Don't ask me questions." That's where they'll stop. But they know it's flat, but they just don't know how to prove it or debate it.
No, I disagree. I disagree because I was one of them. So while you might convince yourself and tell people that you know it's the case, when it comes to actually presenting a decent argument, I could rattle off the sea sparrow argument and debunk Coriolis effect. But in terms of having a silver bullet, I was still asked by people in the comment, "What's your silver bullet?" And up until Black Swan, in terms of saying we unequivocally are not on a sphere surface, and indeed the elevation angle argument, which is to say that an argument that shows you why and how you think you're on a sphere and how that's not possible, that's the silver bullet for me. Well, prior to that...
Yeah, but you're using you. Everyone's different than you. What you deem as appropriate information to say, I know because they have lesser information and they feel just as strong as you do with the lesser information.
Yeah, and as did I at the time. But in retrospect, when I was, concerned with how the next argument might be overcome, there was a certain amount of fear because of that, because of the deep down, like I'm saying, we would now, regardless of being waterboarded, know the circumstances that we are inhabiting. We just know. There's no unknowing that, as whoever it said earlier, I think it was Adam. You're right. You can't unknow that. You can't walk away from it for millions of dollars. It's not like walking away from Scientology or the Moonies. It's not a possibility to unknow about how the nature of the Earth actually presents itself to you, how it's measured, and how it's been turned into a sphere. Once you know that, there's no possibility of it being a sphere anymore. So how are you supposed to go back?
Well, you're not using a level playing field here. You run a daily show. You're under attack all the time. These people aren't. So the little they know is sufficient for them.
It's sufficient to believe.
Hold on. I would like to say something on this, because debunking a position is not the same as having a position. So you can know it's not a globe, but you'd have to make logical inferences after that. And you would be believing it's flat.
Could I try and sum it up? Right, for a lot of people, they know that it can't be a globe, but they also don't know how to accept that it's flat.
Very well put.
Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. So being able to debunk the Earth being a sphere or the heliocentric model was the first really strong point that I latched onto from people like Morgile back in, 2014, 15? I forget when now, it's such a long time ago. But a very long time ago, the undoing of the heliocentric model, the flaws within it, not necessarily the reification, but that was probably part of the understanding, even though I didn't know what that word meant back then. Well, that was easy. You could get to that really easily. But then the challenge from the anti-flat earthers was, how do you prove you're flat Earth? We took that argument and said, no, you're putting us in a position where we have to argue for a false dichotomy. You don't need to make a claim. So if you go back a few shows, you'll hear me say it all the time. I don't need to make a claim. I'm not going to be making a claim. I haven't made a claim. When did I make that claim? That's what you'll hear me say all the time. Because I wasn't in a strong enough position to make a positive assertion until very recently.
Yeah, it's been able to. It's knowing how to accept it. People can't. They know. It's like they know that they have to accept it for it to be a knowing, but they can't get to that point. So they end up in a belief. They only know it's not a globe, and they believe it's more than likely flat. But then you hear, like, that's why you hear some people say, I know it's not a globe, but I don't know what it is. It's like, that is a cognitive thing, where someone can't accept the reality of the situation. They can only go halfway by knowing that it can't be a globe, but they can't get then all the way by accepting that it actually does have a horizontal baseline.
It's not sufficient in most cases. We're not
Yeah,
able
for
to turn everybody necessarily into flat Earth is nice, and it's good to educate those that want to. But if you can get that message over to the masses, and the masses accept that no, it's not a globe, or even at worst, it might still be a globe, but the reasons that they give us are nonsense. It's not science. If you could get the masses to accept that, I'd be more than happy with that. I don't need everybody to be a competent flat earther in terms of balls to bone.
Right, I agree. While we might absolutely disseminate that standard here, and it's a very, very high standard, that isn't like a standard that I think anybody should adhere to at all. I'm not out chasing down flat earthers saying you should understand how it's flat so you can explain it to others. If they choose to come here and acquire that information and find peace as a result, I mean, that would be my highest desire in that regard. That somebody comes along that's a flat earther, if they're not coming to debate us or debunk us, which at the moment are thin on the ground because of the elevation angle argument. And it's no coincidence. It is really quiet. And it is because we've got a positive assertion they can't undo. And their positive assertion comes from our positive assertion of flat earth elevation angle measurements. So it's kind of more than ever game over. We've got the silver bullet that we didn't have prior. So, you know, it's very interesting to see how people react to it when they've only got a belief, and I can only say that with hindsight. So while 10th is right, my standards are a bit skewed, it doesn't mean that I can't reflect and contemplate where I was 6 months ago and go, yeah, you had a very good logical inference for what you believed. Really good. Lots and lots and lots of it. The quantity was high. But that isn't as good as knowing, with no uncertain terms surrounded about it, that you've got a flat plane being measured, and the globe that's being claimed in the Western world for us to actually stand on is taken from those flat Earth angle measurements. It's like, at that point, if people are actually navigating around on the surface, building on the surface, and experiencing the surface flat, what more can you have to show it's flat? I mean, that's it, isn't it? What else can you possibly do?
The elevation angle is great, I agree, but when I flew over a large body of water, I needed no... I knew it's flat. It had to be.
Gravity.
Yeah, hold on a second. Because knowing, this is in the definition of the word knowing, right? Because knowledge is positive and imputed. So debunking a claim is not knowing something. It's debunking a claim.
Hold on. Nathan said gravity for a large body of water. How does that refute a large body of water
You
being
tell me.
flat?
You tell me. If I back
No, that doesn't work.
Why not?
But I think what Neil is talking about is rather than arguing the point with someone, he just knew deep down inside it has to be flat for this to be a reality. This flat water. You can't have flat water on a globe. Isn't that it, Neil?
Well, that means that the water isn't flat then. So by that logical inference, you can take that either way. And this is kind of what I think John's driving at. Well, you can take that statement and put different inflections in the sentence and say, well, water on a globe can't be flat, Brian. Can't you? I just changed the tone and use the same bloody words.
Yeah, well, I can give my example, which is very much in line with exactly what Neil said. I switched so easy.
Hold on. You're missing my point. You're missing my point. You could give the example, and then I could give my globe example, and then we're beautifully set up for a false dichotomy argument, aren't we, Brian, there? I've set that up nicely, haven't I?
Kind of, yes.
I still want to give my example, which is in line with Neil.
Yeah, you can't help it. They all can. It's the same with every flat earth. They want to give their example, and then the globe comes up to stack up next to it, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but...
Well, because they're claiming a globe. It's always going to come.
Yeah, but hang on. We're talking about how you personally know, how you personally accepted something.
I threw in
this
something
is-
globe related that Neil's responding to, so fair enough. We will change. I'll flip my tact back to yes, we're detailing how we understand and know it.
Acceptance
Yeah.
is not knowing. Acceptance is not knowing.
Yeah, correct. Also, I accepted it up until recently. I
I
accepted it.
want to
Had
hear
good logical
Brian's
inferences
example.
for it. Your
Thank you,
water is a logical inference that is easily turned into a false dichotomy by the opponent. So I understand that you can make the argument. I understand that you can hold your position and justify it, but it doesn't alter what John is pointing out. And like I say, I've made my peace with this. It always humbles me when things like this happen because I'm so assured in my position. You go back to any of the shows. Oh, absolutely, Earth is flat. I know. I would probably said that on a few occasions. Well, looking back on it, did I? But it's nice. It's humbling to reflect on these things in that way.
Well, my example, this is why I switched in 8 seconds. This is why it was so easy for me to switch. Because I got a sudden, it was like, you know the way people say, just before you die, if you're in a life and death situation, your whole life flashes in front of your eyes. You know, this kind of thing, where you remember a load of things about your life that weren't relevant just before that experience.
I know why that
That's what
happens.
happened to me. Yeah, well, that's what happens to me in that 8 second period. I remembered back all the times that I questioned things and didn't follow up with the questions. And the final question was for me, just at that 8 seconds mark, was when I said to myself, looking out the window, flying over Australia, wow, Australia just must be a really flat country. Like, yeah, because it's flat. And that was that. I just accepted it.
You, me, and chocolate all have the same origin story, which is to say it was an instantaneous thing. For me, it was, I'm not going to regurgitate my origin story, but you watch a video from Math Paolo and you go, holy fuck, and exactly as you say, all the things that you've questioned immediately flash before your eyes. You go, oh my god, I always knew it as well. In that moment, it's very different from most people, but you, me, and chocolate have the same origin story, it seems.
Well,
Yeah, we just accepted it. Sorry.
Not just you guys. I mean, there's more of us than just the ones you've listed there. But let me tell you what, Chocolate had a song called Why Would They Lie? I think this whole thing on the surface is flat earth debate and all this, but really we're using this subject to show people that the system of lies that exists out there that is changing true reality to what these liars want us to think reality is. So there's not this, unless you're built like us, where we've always doubted and challenged our teachers, and the minute we hear about it, we make an instant change because everything flashes. Outside of those people, we're just dropping seeds into people, and the arguments that we're showing them is saying, wait a minute, if I can't trust, because this is my goal, I want them to say, if I can't trust the powers to be, then how do I ascertain truth if they've been lying to me about so many things? That's what we're doing as a show.
Yeah, well, there's enough people that scratch the surface of those topics and realise that the media lies to come across this subject and not necessarily immediately brace against it. So in terms of that sort of aspiration, I think that's very attainable because of the numbers of people who, at least in the last, I'm going to say 3 years, have become ever more sceptical. General members of the general public, the grey and washed, have become a lot more sceptical against things that maybe 10 or 15 years, maybe 20 years for you, 10th, were sceptical about ages ago, like media being a complete farce. Well, when the general masses start seeing it that way, they lose a lot of the control and the propaganda has had over the masses, and they start investigating things beyond that. And that is when people, they ask, if they don't experience this, what difference does it make? Well, the difference that 10th Man's just described. If you can appreciate the mass scale of the lie in terms of the very nature of your existence, you can appreciate the more subtle, the less subtle lies in the media about various other aspects of your life that you, up until this point, might have just taken as read. Oh, they say that's the case, so it's the case. Well, why? Have you questioned it? Remember how you got duped into thinking you were standing on a sphere? Might it be an idea to question these things before just carte blanche acceptance? That's what it offers you in terms of what difference does it make. If you're asking the question, what difference does it make, then you haven't appreciated that. You haven't appreciated that you've just been duped by one of the biggest lies in history. If you're like, oh, well, so what if it's flat? What difference does it make? Like, well, the difference that you are still being told, and the media will tell you tonight on the telly when you turn it on and watch it in front of your TV dinner, that the Earth's a globe. You've just realised it isn't, but they're still telling you that it is. Therefore, what? Completely believable in every other aspect that they tell you stuff about? For God's sake.
Yeah, it's very narrow. Isn't it very narrow when you hear that?
Well,
what difference would it make?
Because it's in finance, stock market, etc. It's in media, all types of media. It's in politics, that's government, local and national. It's in education from K through whatever. It's in religions, and it's in sports. You just name any subject, it's all there. You can start seeing things. You can see how everything is rigged to go a certain way. People woke up on 9/11 in a mass way. And that's been...
I don't think it's necessarily as a result of something conspiratorial that's occurred. I think it's more likely that the linguistics that are placed, they're more likely to control things. In other words, the magic trick of having atmosphere as part of your general everyday vernacular. So when we just go, oh, it's really hard to not make that mistake. Well, if that's part of your language, if the world and how it presents itself is defined by how you describe it, that's a very powerful trick. I mean, that to me is the essence of magic.
Well, hang on, John. I'm glad you brought that up, because when I talk to people, I try to find common ground. Do you believe that the World Trade Centers, or something like that? And then I could see that which side they are. Okay, and I go, well, what do you think they've done to science in the field of education? Do you think it's true science, or do you think sometimes they slip in pseudoscience? They go, what do you mean? And that just starts the conversation.
Well, I just want to get back to something you all said, because make an observation. What do you prove with an observation?
Not a lot. A lot more can be proven with a measurement, though.
Well, what do you prove with what can you prove with an observation?
That you observe something.
That whatever you just observed actually just did happen.
Hold on, that's different.
Yeah, but
he didn't describe it.
You can prove that it's
hold
not
on. Chocolate's made a step that wasn't made by John. What do you mean happening? He didn't describe anything happening. If you make an observation, I look at my carpet. Is that something happening? No. So far, he's asked me what I can describe about just making an observation. Well, I can just say I've observed it. That's it so far, unless he adds anything.
Yeah, but that's where Black Swan. You can debunk that it's a globe. Black Swan. That's an observation.
Well, you can disprove a positive
hold on, John.
claim.
Sorry, I know you want to get to your point. But that is a logical inference after a begging the question is asserted on their behalf. So modus tollens starts with their implied claim.
Black Swan's useless without the measurement of the distance of the oil rigs. Otherwise, it's just an observation. You can't.
Much better answer. Exactly. You still need an actualization in terms of the physicality you can ascribe to the distance that the horizon is beyond to debunk the original begging the question fallacy that the Earth's a sphere asserted in the positive at the beginning of the modus tollens. So it's a logical inference taking their position in the first instance to be true and then debunking it in the logical consistency. But you need a measurement. Adam's right.
Right. So just looking out over a large body of water and saying it's flat because it looks flat is not a measurement.
Right. You can't just look at the horizon and say it's too far or it's doing anything wrong. But you can say it's beyond oil rigs at 9.86 miles if it is.
Yeah, but John, you're missing the point of this. That could be the very final thing that ends up having you get to a point of acceptance. Like for me, the last thing I remember before I just flipped, the very last thing that went through my head before I just flipped after 8 seconds of Eric the Bay video back in 2015 was me telling myself I've not seen the curvature to the earth when I'm flying over Australia, because Australia just must be a very flat country. That straight away, it was the last thing that went through my head. It was just like, no, it's flat because it's flat. That was it. So
did you not hear what I said about that though? You're just observing and declaring at that point.
Yeah, but I at that point I wasn't trying to prove it to the world. or prove it to anyone else. I was just accepting it myself that it had to be.
It didn't have to be. That's the point. It's
But
not.
John,
proven.
It seems everybody's
take this
pride is
apart
getting
now.
in the way of John's point being made and heard and accepted, because his point totally valid. And
But it's on a different matter.
no, it's
hang
not.
on.
It's on the
One
same
second,
matter.
Stevie.
He's saying at some point I had to have a belief and an understanding rather than knowledge and measurement and proof and a positive assertion to make as a result of those three things. Prior, you only had inference. Now,
No
an
one's-
acceptance
no one's
after
arguing that.
inference isn't the same as knowing, is what John's point is.
No one's arguing that part of the description. Brian is telling a complete different story, and John's coming in with details to it that Brian didn't even.
No, that's not right. What Brian is saying is, no, I took the logical inference, although he's not saying those words, and then I accepted it. And John's saying, yeah, ain't that the truth?
Yes and no, because I'm not really sure what John is saying, because I wasn't trying to prove it to someone, John. I didn't need any more proof for myself. I just accepted it at that point.
But you are someone, right?
Before I converted to flat Earth, I would look outside of planes and make the logical inference that it was just so big, the ball, that I just couldn't see it with my eyes, and I accepted that.
There was a
Then
couple
I
of
looked out
times
the window and I accepted it was so big and it was flat. That didn't prove it to me, neither.
No, and that came across about 18 months ago. I remember a show very distinctly. I couldn't tell you which show it was, but a show where I asked Adam, or took a leading methodology to get him to a point where he had to make a positive assertion about flat Earth. And I can't remember the example, but I remember you saying it with what I now know after the fact from the behaviour panel. There's something called fading facts, where your assertion gets quieter towards the end because you're maybe not quite so confident about it. That's a fading fact. Now, when you gave out the information at the time, I'm sure you were fairly confident in your belief. But just by the way you disseminated the information, which was a positive claim from memory, was to suggest that you weren't as confident as perhaps I was in my belief at the time.
But beliefs don't happen in a vacuum. There's all kinds of stuff that Brian saw through his life. There's all kinds of words that have distinct, definite meanings to them. And when he's flying over the ocean or Australia, wherever, all of those things are hitting synapses in his brain and telling him, man, it is flat. And then John here is saying, yeah, but you can't, that's not something you can argue with because that's just a belief. And Brian says, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But then what happened?
So
Then
let
happened
John
to
make
me,
his
though? I
conclusory.
fought my brother.
So let John make his conclusory point then, given that you're in acceptance of that point that he's making, which is to say you've got a faith, you've got a belief, and that's fine. You're not trying to quote unquote prove it to anybody.
But I'm not in acceptance of it.
But you said you're not trying to prove it to anybody. The next thing I heard from John was, you're somebody. Hold on, Brian, hold on. The next thing that John said, but it got completely ignored, was, well, you are somebody. So when you say, I'm not trying to prove it to anybody, well, John's point is you haven't proven it to yourself, though, either, and you're somebody. That was the next thing he said. Hopefully, John will pick up from there.
Yeah, I did hear it, but I didn't get a chance to respond to that. So, yeah, I wasn't trying to prove it to myself. At that point, I was 37 years of age. 7 years ago, I was 37 years of age at that point, and it was a whole, what some of what Kent said was correct. It was a whole 37 years of experiences that led me to accepting that it is what it is, as opposed to arguing against it within myself or looking for other proof, other things that are supposed to be proof. I was like, no, it has to be, because if it was a globe, then all these things wouldn't be this would not be the situation. End of story.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how I went through it too. Yeah. I couldn't consciously handle it, but I knew it was right. I just needed more time.
Well, y'all are describing belief.
Indeed, they are.
Hold on a second. Hold on. What happened to me, though? My brother told me I fought him for 2 weeks. I feel terrible.
Well, you agreed, and then you disagreed, and then you agreed. That's what you did, Neil.
And John, what's the problem with belief when it's accumulation of all of your past experiences leading you to say, you know what, it's flat. What's the problem
Ask
with
the
that
people.
belief?
Yeah, but I
And-
don't think it's belief.
Ask Brian, the
That's
one
where
being
John's
super
wrong.
defensive about it and saying that it isn't.
No, I'm
Yeah.
saying belief. Everyone wants
Belief
to
driven by
downcast
evidence.
belief. Oh gosh.
That's incorrect. Evidence is proof.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't. John's saying you're all talking about belief. No, you don't have acceptance for belief. You don't accept the belief. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, you do.
You don't. You don't.
Do you believe the evidence when the evidence is proven to be true?
If it's evidence, it doesn't require belief.
Well, how do people talk, Nathan? My goodness, you guys narrow everything down to one little thing and nothing more.
Because you're using the word belief, so you can't reuse it in that sense. It's that distinguishment, isn't it? You don't have the proof; you just believe it at the moment, and that's what we're saying in terms of when we did believe the Earth was flat, but we didn't have the proof. But what Brian's saying is, no, I always knew, yeah, but not so necessarily with the proof that we have now. But the to quote Bob Nero, the preponderance of contradictions was enough to make me know. And what we're asking Brian is, why are you opposed to the word believe at that point? Because he's the one that's saying, no, I didn't believe, I knew. So we're asking why.
Well, it could be both. It could be both because my teacher, hang on, Brian. My teacher, when I challenged him in school, and he was one of my favorite teachers, I kept raising my hand, and finally he says, look, I don't even believe it. I just have to teach it. Well, when those words came out of his mouth, I said, well, great. That settles that. I'm being indoctrinated here.
Well, you could argue that
Hold on, let
proof
Brian
is just
respond.
a combination of belief and evidence, and just the same way that hate is just a combination of the two words love and fear. So proof is just evidence and belief combined.
Okay, fair enough.
That's incorrect. No, that's not fair enough. That's incorrect.
Reformulate for me, XO.
I can believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. But I was waiting for Brian. Can we have Brian then, Kiwi? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, if I spent 37 years not accepting the world as it's presented to me, and then suddenly I accept it as it's presented to me, I can't call that a belief.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Kiwi.
He said that belief is proof, right? Or it's a combination of evidence. That's incorrect. Belief is something that has no evidence. So that's a contradiction in terms.
Well, then, what we had wasn't a belief then, prior to the elevation angle and black swan in combination. That I wouldn't call a belief then. If it has no, then again, I've just defined that evidence would be proof. So it is a belief. No way around this. Oh dear. How humbling.
Belief
Brian makes a point.
from Oxford dictionaries. Hold on a second. Belief from Oxford dictionaries. An acceptance that something exists or is true, especially one without proof, trust, faith, or confidence in.
Go ahead.
Right? So that's
yeah, matter of fact then, I would say that my understanding of flat earth prior till maybe last 3 or 4 months was a belief. That's how I see it as being defined now.
I got Webster's mental conviction of the truth of some statement or the reality of some being or phenomena.
So QE, the issue is that if I'm sorry. So the issue is that the belief is based on evidence. No, the belief is based on evidence, and you can't prove any. You can't prove anything.
Yes, you can prove. You can prove a lot of things. So that's just horseshit.
And I would need to believe your evidence.
No, you don't. Belief, you don't know what belief is. I just read it to you, and you're going right up against it.
Hold on a second.
Right up against it.
To have evidence is to prove something. If you've got evidence of something, that means it's been evidenced. Yeah? So there's no longer there's no longer a need to believe it after you've acquired evidence for it.
Right, Nathan,
Exactly.
just
So what?
This is a special nuance, right? I want to go back to what Brian was saying, because this is about, because I think is it now and then to make the differential, because this is about the reality we live in. Why are we saying I need to prove something that is obviously and observably flat? The only reason we're searching for some proof from the obvious is because of the construct of a ball that we need to then unprove a ball. We don't actually, in our acceptance of the world we live in, we can accept it's flat initially, and we should accept it's flat. We only go searching for proof because we think it's a ball or thought it was a ball. So your starting position should be flat because every experience is that. So is that a belief?
No, and I'm glad you put it that way, because that's profound, perfect, but with a terrible flaw, which is to say that the first description you gave was the accurate description. We have come from believing that we're on a ball, and that is why we now need proof.
Yeah, that's the same thing. But that's the reason that we're saying. But we accept that the reasons weren't valid, but not of a ball. So then surely we should revert to default position, which is, well, what do we experience? That's got to be the default acceptance.
That's a logical inference after you have proof.
The default logical inference, aka belief. The default belief should be flat, and I agree with that also.
My default belief is also that it's not spinning, but I have the knowledge that it's not spinning because I'm experiencing no spin. So I couldn't say that that's some proof. I can use water as level. These are all my life experiences are proofs that it's not spinning and it's not curving.
Well, it's almost like you're having to prove something that's, as you said, obvious and observable. But also, when it comes to spinning, it's unreasonable to expect to prove something isn't occurring, like prove non-existence of unicorns. It's not reasonable to put that upon somebody. But in terms of the Earth and its actual nature, when you think about it in terms of proof, it should be very easy. It is the nature of our world. Therefore, I mean, let's be honest, in the face of adversary or whatever, our opponents trying to control that, we've still come to the point where we can say, here is cast iron proof without flinching.
Yeah. But see, the thing is, if it was so obvious, then how did they trick everybody?
Exactly. Well, there wouldn't be a need to go for proof.
In the maths.
You mean science?
Yeah, but you were told, you were shown. I'll just go back to what Mark Sargent says every time, and he's correct. The first thing, you go into school as a little child, and what do you see? Even in the nursery, you see a globe. You're seeing a globe everywhere. That's how they can trick you. That's why it took me 37 years to accept that it wasn't a globe.
You're given
pseudo. That logic's flawed.
Yeah.
That logic's flawed.
No, you fed pseudo.
They would have never come up with the idea of a globe if that was true.
You lied to and colluded to and conned into thinking it's a globe with pseudoscience and false proofs that you, without thoroughly examining, believe to be proofs. So as far as you're concerned, you know it's a ball. That's your starting default position in flat Earth. You know it's a ball because you've been given proofs.
Do you mind if I let...
They're not proofs.
Do you mind if I let John have the last word on this? It's him that developed this conversation. Go ahead, John.
But the thing is, the idea that the reason you were deceived is because, hold on a sec. The reason you were deceived is because people deceived you. That would preclude the creation of heliocentrism to begin with. So that's not true.
And with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and Jude Plus panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hitting the PayPal link, hitting the thanks button, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.